On this episode of Motorsport Recently, we'll be discussing the new Indycar calendar, some F1 news, and Bugatti breaking the 300-mile-an-hour barrier. This is Triple Crown Racing. Let's get into it.
Hello everybody and welcome to Motorsport Recently. My name is Jack McKenzie and, well, unless I delete things in the future of this channel, previous videos, this is the 101st video that has been uploaded to this channel, and joining me on the mic is the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, and we'll be going through all the news from this week. Guys, welcome along.
101.
Jack, thank you.
Condor Primulon.
Last week's episode was the 100th video, and I didn't even realize, and I was like, "Oh my god, that was the 100th video that's been uploaded." However, I might end up deleting some stuff, some old stuff that either wasn't very good, or I probably should delete it. So we might get to have another 100th and 101st video. So I think, without further ado, we should get into our first segment. It's time for our Red Line Headlines.
The jingle is about to play, it just takes a while to load. Sorry. Here it comes. Red light. You know you wanna. You know you wanna. You know you wanna. Headline. It's Red Line Headline. It's Red Line Headline. It's Red Line Headlines. There we go. Sorry about that. I should have warmed it up before. Anyway, let's go.
Alright, it's time now for your red line headlines. Charles Leclerc won a emotional Belgian Grand Prix after holding off Lewis Hamilton to score the victory. Last week's Grand Prix was the Monegasque's first ever Formula One victory and Ferrari's first win of 2019. Turning to NASCAR, that Jones boy, Eric Jones, took victory for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Bojangles Southern 500 at Darlington, holding off Kyle Larson in the Ricky Craven throwback to win his second ever NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series race victory. This means that all Joe Gibbs cars have won in 2019. Kyle Busch in the 1990 Snickers throwback was the third place finisher. Turning to IndyCar, Will Power took victory in Portland for Team Penske in a carnage-filled race. Turn 1 calamities at the Festival Curves ended the races of both Schmidt-Peterson Motorsport drivers as well as Graham Rahal and collected many other cars. Ryan Hunter-Reay came together with Jack Harvey a few laps later and ended his race as well. While Power, Rossi, Joseph Newgarden, and two rookies, Felix Rosenqvist and Colton Herta, were able to pick up some good results, a technical problem put Scott Dixon out of championship contention going into the final round in a couple weeks at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. The top three there were Will Power, Felix Rosenqvist, and Alexander Rossi. Turning to WEC, Toyota have carried their momentum into the 2019-2020 FIA WEC season, taking a 1-2 at the 4 Hours of Silverstone. The number 7 car was the winner of the two Gazoos, with the Rebellion Racing number 3 car, the part-time entry, finishing in third. The number 42 Cool Racing team took victory on debut with the number 36 Signatech Alpine and Racing Team Nederland, Orica bringing it home in second and third, respectively. Issues for the AF Corsa cars meant that Porsche were able to take a 1-2 in GT Pro on the debut of their new RSR. The 51 car suffered tire issues while the 71 car was involved in a high-speed collision. It was not a fruitless day for AF Corsa, however. The 83 car was able to take victory in GT, with Aston Martin finishing second and MR Racing finishing in third. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Red Line headlines for the week of September the 7th, 2019.
September the 8th if you live in Australia.
Yes.
It's been a good week in racing, I have to say.
I will say, after what had happened last week, Charles Leclerc winning at Spa was just the most fitting thing, I think. I think we all needed that.
We most certainly did, and he drove absolutely superb. However, I do want to point out I'd say the hero of Ferrari, or that weekend, other than Charles Leclerc, Sebastian Vettel acted as a very, very good team player for Ferrari.
He did. Of course, a lot of us weren't expecting that to happen, but it made sense for the time for Leclerc to win the race. He was obviously the fastest driver in the team. He'd taken pole position by 0.7 of a second. And really, in that situation, Sebastian Vettel does have to just take the wingman role. And I'm interested to see what happens this weekend, actually, in front of the Tifosi in Italy. Because, of course, Charles Leclerc has been very, very strong here as well. And if he wins, I wouldn't be surprised if Ferrari really start to prioritise him. He'll be, I think, ahead of Vettel in the championship. It probably depends on where Vettel finishes. Yeah, I think it's going to create quite an interesting dynamic at Ferrari, because they don't appear to be doing the kind of the usual approach that Ferrari goes for, where they go into the season knowing exactly who the number one driver is and who the wingman is. I think they've gone in more open-minded than usual, and that is very refreshing to see.
So Charles Leclerc's victory was just what the doctor ordered at the Belgian Grand Prix. Of course, some other points on the Belgian Grand Prix. Tragic for Lando Norris that his engine failed for him on the last lap.
Very much so. He was heading for his best ever result, 5th position, and to see him stop there by the side of the road at the start of the last lap was very, very disappointing indeed.
I feel like, particularly for Freya Edwards, who's an avid writer for this podcast when it comes to Formula E and whatnot. She's a massive Max Verstappen fan. I feel a little bit sorry for all the orange fans that trekked out to the Belgian Grand Prix only to see Max Verstappen's suspension pretty much fail on the first lap and end up in the barrier.
Yeah, a lot of people... I think people were being too unfair on Verstappen for that opening incident. I think really it wasn't his fault. It was just kind of everyone getting pinched together at turn one. I don't really think you can pitch the blame onto anyone there. I do think that he probably should have driven slower after that, because he knew full well that his suspension was damaged and could fail at any time. And I think he was going too quickly, and that's why he made it to the barrier. Although I'm being very, very harsh on him there. It wasn't really his fault at all. Sorry, Chris.
I think it was both of their faults, really. I don't see any reason to say otherwise. The problem is, we've got, I forgot where I was going with this. I had a thought, but I forgot it.
Very much so. He was heading for his best ever result, 5th position, and to see him stop there by the side of the road at the start of the last lap was very, very disappointing indeed.
I forgot where I was going with this. I had a thought, but I forgot it.
We could point out also that Haas didn't have a very, very good race. Their setup wasn't quite right for the track, but I'm sure they'll be hoping to do a little bit better this weekend to try and Grand Prix.
Have they ever had a good race?
Also, it was also good to see that Antonio Giovinazzi was able to walk away from his crash at the end.
Yeah, it was a weird one, just snapped away at very, very high speed. You don't tend to see accidents like that anymore these days, except when there's like a tyre failure or something. Whichever the case, it appeared he just got over the curb and around it went. And after a weekend of big accidents, it was great to see him walk away from it. It was very much like the accident that Yuri Vips had in the Formula 3 race, where he submarined under the barrier. And I'm just glad that didn't happen as well for Giovinazzi, because he was travelling at significantly higher speed. But yeah, good to see him walk away from that one.
Let's talk a little bit about IndyCar. Obviously, there were some people who put on some very, very good performances. However, there were some people doing very, very stupid things in Turn 1.
That's Portland for you. The Festival Curve Complex at Portland is actually very difficult, especially when you're trying to late brake someone, like what happened with RHR. That was a silly move. I'm sorry, but Turn 1 has always been that way. Ever since they reconfigured the track to add that Festival Curve in, I think, 1992, I think it was, or 94. Somebody in the chat help us out here. But oh yeah, it was probably before 1994, because of that World Sports Car that was actually mounted onto its side in the 94 race.
Oh yeah. And then the driver.
The 94 IMSA race.
And then the driver got out, pushed it over, and carried on. Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
Well, I don't remember because I'm not that old, but I've seen the footage. It's an easy mistake to make. Of course, when you have a corner like that, it looks very, very inviting to just throw it up the inside, and even the best do that and end up spinning people around. However, I was going to say, I actually had an accident at that corner once in a sim race. It was back in 2017. I'd damaged my car previously in the race, so I'd come into the pits, and I was just leaving the pits when I realised that I didn't have any brakes, and I ploughed straight into my teammate who was midway through the corner. So yeah, not a good place for your brakes to fail.
So, good results for the rookies at Portland.
Yes, Colton Herta started on the pole, led the first, I believe, the first stint of the race, and then wound up fourth at the end of it. And Scott Dixon. Colton, sorry.
About Colton as well. He managed to bring it home fifth, I believe.
Oh, Rosenquist wound up second. Herta was fourth.
But it was fourth, okay.
Unless, wait a minute, checking. Fourth.
I'm seriously impressed by Jack Harvey this season, though. I mean, where did he come from? He's a driver who I'd very rarely heard of before this season, and he's already had a few standout performances. I think his consistency could definitely do with a bit of improving, but then again, he is in a kind of low-ranked team. And yeah, I think the standout performances that he's had have been very, very impressive.
It was a shame for Jack Harvey because he started very, very far up the field, but he got pretty much collected in an incident that wasn't really his fault. However, he did manage to pick up a podium, I believe, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Grand Prix. So
yeah, he finished second.
But good results for the rookies, and
or third.
How many podiums is that for Felix Rosenquist? That's
he hasn't really had that many, but he's been there or thereabouts.
Had a few. I think he's had a few. Anyway, moving on to WEC. Well, not really much to say in LMP1. Toyota's taking a 1-2. Cool
Although
racing.
having said that, they have been, the Rebellion has actually been closing the gap quite a bit. And,
It's progress, but not very much progress.
yeah, and also there was some... Apparently there was also an incident with Norman Nato, or is it Nato or NATO?
NATO. There was an incident with NATO, and, well, I haven't actually read very much into this, but I've seen from the headlines that it ended with one of the pit crew, I believe, being hospitalized, which is not particularly good.
Oh, I take it we didn't see that and we don't know much about it.
Well, speaking of not seeing anything, the WEC coverage, well, it wasn't brilliant because I don't think Eurosport covered the entire race, and that the WEC's idea of extended highlights was 6 minutes long. So
Right.
I guess we'll have to wait for the 52-minute report to come out in a few weeks' time.
Or when the full race comes.
The full race comes out, yeah, exactly.
Now, Cool Racing, moving on to LMP2. Cool Racing, I always thought it was actually a spin-off of Signatech. Like, it was sort of the B team of the Signatech quote-unquote Alpine. And it was really nice to see them take the winner's trophy. And how about the Racing Team Nederland entry, eh?
They did pretty well with their new Orica chassis. Orica, obviously, well, it's proving to be the dominant chassis. I feel like Ligier and Dallara, their chassis just have not been as good as the Orica chassis. So it was probably a good move for them to switch to Orica, and it's paid off, and they've brought home a podium in the first race of the season, which means that they could actually be championship contenders for the first time. Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Something just happened in the Xfinity race. Christopher Bell just decided to
Has he had an
drive like an abs. He's decided to drive into Tyler Reddick.
He's had an accident.
Oh god. Okay, we won't spoil any Xfinity results or anything that's currently happening now, because I think some people might want to watch it later on. So anyway, Porsche got lucky in GTE Pro. They managed to get a 1-2 for their new RSR. Unfortunately, AF Corsa had some issues, but hopefully that will be a season-long battle that we get to see. Porsche and Ferrari.
Yeah, hopefully. Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say.
You're too distracted by the Xfinity race.
No,
You're having trouble there, Chris.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah,
need, like, a teleprompter or
Porsche. By the way, I may need one.
Sorry, Chris. Carry on.
Chat. Please start a GoFundMe to get care of Get Chris a teleprompter.
My goodness. Anyway.
But Porsche have basically, I think they may have figured out the new RSR a little bit early.
Well, apparently, from some of the headlines I've seen, people from Porsche are saying that car is not 100% yet.
That's because the sandbags haven't been removed. But yeah, also third place finish for the Aston Martin, the 97, for Alex Lynn and Maxime Martin.
Yes.
A good result for them. And in GTE AM, I believe this is actually the debut for the number 83 in the series.
I think something tells me that the 83 was a Kessel car last year, and now it's a AF Corsa car. Anyway,
And second there was Paul Dallalana with new driver with Darren Turner, who's been moved down into the AM car, and in third, and Ross Gunn is the new driver there with the 98, and in third place was Olivier Beretta, Kai Casalino, and Motoaki Ishikawa in the MR Racing Machine, the Ferrari.
so that's WEC, but we have spent a long time on Redline Headlines, so we'll just quickly say that Eric Jones took his first ever victory in the second ever victory.
In the throwback race, by the way. Hence why I put... you may notice...
I don't know why
people out there... For people out there in Radio Land that have actually not seen the document, I put that Jones boy as the winner, Ricky Craven in second, and Hut Strickland in third. The reason for that is, and there is actually a reason for this, that was the throwback.
Right,
That was the throwback they ran. So basically, Eric Jones was throwing back to his old super late model car. Kyle Larson was throwing back to Ricky Craven in the old Kodiak Chevy. And Hut Strickland was... Kyle Busch was driving the 1990 Hut Strickland Snickers Buick.
Anyway, we should probably be
Toyota,
moving.
but-
We should probably be moving on to our feature stories. So that was your Redline Headlines,
And that has been your Redline Headlines.
and we start the feature stories off with some IndyCar. Chris, what's been going on there?
Well, I'd like to tell you. The schedule for the 2020 NTT Data IndyCar season was recently announced this week. 2020 will once again see a 17-round championship. Are you listening, F1? However, there have been some changes made to the calendar. Let's take a look. The series will start at St. Petersburg before going to Barber Motorsport Park. Circuit of the Americas moves back to round 4, while Long Beach switches and becomes round 3. The races during the month of May are still in their usual places, of course, because Indy. Detroit, Texas, and Road America also remain in the same spots as this year. However, the biggest change to the new calendar is the fact that Pocono has been replaced with the 3/4 mile oval at Richmond International Raceway. IndyCar last visited the 3/4 mile oval in 2009, and now after an 11-year hiatus, it's back. From Richmond, we go to the streets of Toronto, otherwise known as my home. Before Iowa, Mid-Ohio, Gateway, Portland, and the season finale at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And while I'm sad to see Pocono go, Richmond coming back is actually something I'm definitely looking forward to.
I think it had to be done,
especially-
to be honest. Judging by the events of Pocono recently, I think it had to be done. I think that the walls basically just weren't high enough for the speeds and the banking degree, and basically it just got a bit dangerous sometimes. So I think it had to be done. But yeah, I actually don't know the Richmond track. I know it's an oval, but I don't know much about it, and I've never seen a race there. So that'll be interesting, I suppose. What are your thoughts on the Richmond track, Chris?
It produced a good show when I I watched them before. They would always run a night race there, at Richmond between 2001 and 2008
Okay.
in the Indy Racing League. So if it's anything like Iowa was this year, and we all remember how Iowa went, it was quite an exciting little race. I think we all can agree here. If they turn up the turbo pressure to the levels at Iowa, it'll be a good race for sure. And it's just great to see them back. And apart from that, there's not really much change to the schedule, except for Coda and Long Beach switching dates,
Okay.
which I think is actually quite welcome. Because
I just wish I could see it on TV, or at all for that matter. But
There's always the highlights on the YouTube channel and NBC, and those highlights are really, really fantastic. Pretty much since what's happened with Fox, I've been watching those highlights, and they've been absolutely superb. Also, it's I don't think Pocono will be gone forever. I reckon if they can fix the track whilst IndyCar goes to Richmond, then we could see it back in But with Richmond, we said, of course, there'll be like some Iowa racing, which should be very, very good. And well, Chris, I think you actually in the IndyCar racing at Richmond, so
I did.
From your perspective, do you think that's a good decision? Well, I think you do think that's a good decision.
Absolutely. They used to actually, in the 2008 race, they had 26 cars on the grid there, and it was actually quite exciting. I just hope the fans, I hope it's promoted well enough that especially if they get the city of Richmond to actually help with the promotion of it, because the problem that a lot of ovals have is not having very much attendance, being very bare. But personally, IndyCar's in a bit of an upswing at the moment, and really has been since the 2015 season. And and you know what? I honestly, genuinely believe that Richmond is going to be a winner in the season. I just wish that we could get a couple more classic tracks come back. Like, for instance, I'm just spitballing here. Cleveland.
Okay.
The old airport track at Cleveland.
I've driven
And
that. Yeah, I drove that once in a race. Interesting layout. I certainly wouldn't think of holding a race there, but they did, and I suppose it worked.
oh, it very much. It was actually one of the most exciting, and the people of Cleveland love their Indy cars. And Michigan.
Of course.
I want Michigan to come back as a 500 miler because not just because of the tradition of it, but also apart from Indianapolis, it honestly, genuinely is one of the best 500 milers. But the problem is, as long as Roger Penske owns the Belle Isle race, you won't see it. Because they don't want to clash with I believe it's because Roger Penske doesn't want to have two races at his own tracks.
Right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to 2020 for sure, and
hoping the Gold Coast can come back at some point, but we're talking about classic tracks. Anyway, we should probably move on to the WEC because there's been some interesting stories there, and I think, oh yes, Caitlin has the first story from the WEC. Would you like to tell us about what's going on there?
Rebellion have cut back down to a single full-time car for the remainder of the 2019/20 season. The number 3 car will not be racing again until next year's race at Spa and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The number 3 car was fielded by Nathaniel Berton, Pipo Durrani and Loic Duval, and the number 1 car, which will contest the rest of the season, will be driven by Gustavo Menezes, Bruno Senna and Norman Nato.
And it's a bold move, but
well, people just they know they can't compete with Toyota. I think that the hybrid regulations are probably the worst thing to have happened to the WEC in probably forever. I think that the hybrid engines in the Toyota just need to go because they are killing the entire series, basically. Yeah,
basically
we lost SMP as well because of this as well, and SMP was one of the biggest teams in the new LMP1 formula, and now that's gone. I think Dragon Speed's gone as well. I mean, pretty much we only have Rebellion and Ginetta left. Even Bike Collars is gone. Everyone's gone because of this.
Yeah, and actually, Bicolis is working on their hypercar, so that's why they're taking the break. But yeah, it's a bit of a yeah.
I just really hope the hypercar regulations work, because as the WEC is at the minute, it is not working. Yeah, you can say that maybe LMP2 and GTE are working fine, but then again, people look at the top class. They don't say, they don't say Corvette or Ford won today. They say, oh, Toyota won again, don't they? It's like, yeah. So, really, the top class is the most important in any league when it comes to, like, the popularity of the league and what people think of it. And I just think that, that needs to change. I also don't like the way that apparently they were charging the same price this year for the Silverstone 4 hours as they used to for the Silverstone 6 hours. So that's 2 hours less of racing for the same amount of money, and I believe there were even fewer support categories. I do not understand why that happened. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that really needs to be sorted out there, but, yeah.
What was on the support bill? I know, apart from the European Le Mans series.
Yeah, so there was that. I'm actually not sure if there was anything else.
Or was there the, was that GT LMP3 challenge thing running as well?
You mean the Michelin GT Cup? I don't think so.
Michelin Le Mans Cup, yeah, no.
Michelin Le Mans Cup, sorry. I don't think so.
Okay, but then also what's really, really stupid is why are the ACO insisting of running the exact same race in 2 different series? Because with the ELMS 4 hours of Silverstone and the WEC 4 hours of Silverstone, I mean, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
Why not just have a 6-hour race? I mean, anyway, also have another story from the WEC. Chris, would you like to tell us about that?
I certainly can. Aston Martin has confirmed that the WEC version of its hypercar, the Valkyrie, will not feature a hybrid system.
Good.
According to Sports Car... absolutely. It's fantastic. According to Sports Car 365, David King, Aston Martin's sporting president, said that because of the massive amount of power the car already produces, Aston chose not to adopt a hybrid strategy. The Valkyrie's 6.5-liter V12, which It pumps out a whopping 1,160 horsepower and will actually need to be detuned in order to conform with hypercar regulations. And having just read that, I think every car guy in the world has had blood redirected to.
Not say it. Do not say what
I think I know what you mean, Chris. Yeah, I just really hope. I just really hope that no one needs to use a hybrid engine because it seriously elevates the quality of the series. Yeah, I just I just hope that no one needs to use a hybrid engine, and I hope that the Valkyrie isn't now massively outperformed by cars that do use hybrid engines, because that would be pretty dreadful to see as well. Really, I just hope the hypercar regulations work, because that is what we need to save Le Mans racing, basically.
Yeah, also, there's no. Well, Aston Martin are going with the no replacement for displacement strategy, which I am very, very much a fan of. So that should
Well,
be a
if
very, very a good sounding car.
if it goes the whole 24 hours without catching fire, all the power to it.
Yes.
All the power to them. And if basically it's that old saying, "Go out in a blaze of glory." Well, if they can either win the race or catch fire doing it, that's basically all that needs to be said, really.
Anyway, if no one's got any more to say on the WEC, we should probably move on to our next story.
Yes, and I believe that would be you, Jack.
Yes, it is me. Well, while this isn't strictly speaking a motorsport story, well, I suppose if you count a car going very, very fast, then this does count as a motorsport story. So I thought we'd talk about it anyway. Well, there is a new king of speed, and its crown seems rather untouchable. So it was announced during the week that in a record run that occurred recently, a modified Bugatti Chiron was clocked at 304.77 miles per hour. You heard me right, 304.77 miles an hour, 490 kilometers an hour in a test run last month. The car was run at Volkswagen Erlesian track, I believe that is. A few changes were made to the car to achieve this breakneck speed. The Dallara design body was 10 millimeters longer than the regular car, with a longer tailpiece. The car is lower and fitted with a new exhaust, Michelin Cup Pilot 2 tires, a roll cage, and the other passenger seat was removed. A modified engine named Thor was also used to produce 1,578 brake horsepower. Bugatti test driver Andy Wallace piloted the car on its world record-breaking run. Wallace is a 3-time Daytona 24 winner, a 2-time 12 Hours of Sebring winner, a Petit Le Mans winner, and the winner of the 1988 24 Hours of Le Mans. He has now, of course, added the fastest man in a road car to his impressive resume. Following the announcement of their record, Bugatti announced its retirement from going after speed records.
So I'd like to point out quickly that it doesn't count, okay? Still, officially, the fastest car in the world is the Koenigsegg Agera RS, because this record doesn't count. The car had to be heavily modified to achieve it, and really, what you've ended up with there is a prototype. That's why I don't really think it's very relevant. I don't think that they've actually beaten any records at all. They say it's a record-beating run, and maybe I suppose if you made a record for cars based on road cars, it would be... But even then, it's not, because there are drag cars that go faster that are based on road cars. Well, very, very loosely based on road cars, I suppose you could say. So, really, I just... I'm not really sure if I get all the hype about it, because I think it, yeah, they've achieved a lot. Realistically, they haven't really achieved anywhere near as much as they're making it out to have done.
Suppose they could just sell the modified prototype.
Well, not as a road car.
I mean, I think it's still technically road legal
No, it
because
was.
it's on road tires.
No,
It's on
it
road
was.
tires.
No, it's on Michelin Cup Pilot 2 tires. Whatever those
That's a
are.
road tire. That's
Is
a road
it?
tire. Yes, it is.
Okay, well, it's on road tires, although I'm not sure it would fit other regulations, like, for example, with the longer bodywork and the exhaust and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not really sure that it would
Is-
actually pass.
Is it a homologation special?
I don't know.
I
what
don't-
you mean, sorry.
Personally, I think I have a new rule for speed record cars
Okay.
because Gran Turismo. Every speed record car has to run on comfort soft tires.
So,
Oh,
also,
wow.
the fact that Bugatti have said they are going to retire from going after speed records, I reckon that's quite temporary. I reckon that's temporary until until it gets safer to do so. Bugatti, of course, they don't want to have a serious accident on their hands. And they know that going those speeds, the tires are probably not going to hold up, and all sorts of things could happen. It's very, very dangerous for now, but to be honest, I'd say that in a few decades' time, Bugatti's going to be back doing what they do best, going ridiculously high speed, and yeah, I can see them beating the record a few more times in the future.
Well, it has shown that going 300 miles an hour is possible. I think Koenigsegg are going after the same record, so in the not too distant future we could have 300-mile-an-hour hypercars, or perhaps maybe even 300-mile-an-hour race cars, which would be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
Plus, Andy Wallace is no stranger to breaking records. I believe he was actually the one that drove the McLaren F1 in, I think, 1995.
Oh wow.
When they wound up becoming the first. When they beat the Jag.
Indeed, yeah. Um,
He's no
yeah,
slouch.
I just hope that next time they can do it properly, they can actually beat the official record, because
Which I think do they own that or no?
no, it's the Koenigsegg RS that holds the official land speed record for road cars. Used to be the Bugatti Veyron. People thought that it was the Hennessy Venom before, but the Hennessy Venom also didn't count because they didn't run in both directions. If I get up the official, well, I say official, I actually mean the Wikipedia page for it. Yeah, it has the Koenigsegg RS as having the record at 277.87 miles per hour. And the one before that was the Bugatti Veyron 16.4 Supersport, set by James May, and then immediately Pierre
Yeah.
after that. Actually, the McLaren F1 that you were talking about, that was actually 1993 rather than 95.
And Martin Brundle also set a record as well.
Did he? Oh yeah, for the van. Yeah, he said.
No, he was in the Jag, I think.
Was he?
Or was he in the? Does it say who the driver was in the McLaren?
No, it wasn't. No, it doesn't. Sorry.
I actually have Andy Wallace's racing career up right now. Wallace first drove the McLaren F1 at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995. He brought the car home to a third place overall finish and second in class. His co-drivers were Derek Bell and Justin Bell.
And he
Interestingly, the Jaguar XJ220's run also didn't count. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you there.
That's okay. That was Martin Brundle
Okay, makes sense.
in
since he did race
1993, I think.
92 for the Jaguar. It does make sense because he did race for Jaguar at Le Mans. Also, hello to Freya Edwards, who's joined us in the chat. Hey,
she's in
Freya.
chat.
Hi, Freya.
Good to see
Hello,
you.
Freya. I wonder if we'll ever see a 300-mile-an-hour Indycar or something. That would be very, very interesting to see.
I kind of hope not.
The speed!
I kind of hope not. Like, you know, I think the speed they're going at now is fine for racing, and any quicker is just ludicrous, basically.
I reckon people would have said the same thing when they were going 150 miles an hour.
No.
Didn't BAR once do that? With a 400-mile-an-hour F1 car where they just took off the wings?
100 miles.
I've heard about that, but I've never...
The Bonneville 400?
I've heard about it, but I haven't
400
seen it.
kilometers an hour. 400 kilometers an hour.
I was going to say, 400
Yeah,
miles
that
an hour
one.
is a bit ridiculous.
So that's a... I don't know,
All they
miles
did
per
was
hour.
basically shave the 3/4 of the wing off.
And that's still fairly brisk. I mean, that's 248 miles an hour.
At Bonneville, no less.
Bonneville, yeah. Anyway, speaking of Formula One, we do have some Formula One news, which Caitlin is going to tell us about.
Indeed. The Italian Grand Prix has signed a contract extension, my apologies, and is set to stick around until the end of 2024. Of course, a few years ago, it was announced that there would be a change to the track design of the Italian Grand Prix for the 2017 season, so obviously that didn't happen. I still don't think it is going to happen, even though it was pretty much confirmed a few years ago. Whatever the case, the track is going to be extended nonetheless, and I'd say that's very good. That's very good news. The Italian Grand Prix, well, often it doesn't produce that good of a race. It's a very unique race on the Formula One calendar, and that's what makes it important, I think. There's no other race like it, where slipstream is so important that drivers will deliberately tow each other around in qualifying to that extent. It just doesn't really happen like that. So yeah, I love the Italian Grand Prix, and I'm glad that it's staying for another year.
It is, of course, home to the Tifosi.
Of course, they couldn't race without the Italian Grand Prix. Formula One just couldn't go ahead without it. It brings in so much money because of Ferrari, because of the Tifosi, because Italian fans are probably the most passionate Formula One fans in the world. Yeah, it's no surprise to see them signing a contract extension.
Let's have some other news from another European country.
Spa in Belgium is planning to add gravel traps in place of the tarmac runoff on the exit of Radion in the wake of Antoine Hubert's crash. They hope to have the change signed off by the end of the year and gravel added by 2022, and I think it's a bad idea.
Why?
Because cars there go off at very high speed, and I think a gravel trap there is just going to flick cars up in the air. That does tend to be what happens when you put a car into a gravel trap at high speed. What they really need to do, they say they can't extend the barrier there because there's a drop at the edge of the track. I think, in my opinion, the track is fine. Okay, maybe the runoff area on the inside of Radion could be a bit less rough, because that does tend to flip cars up in the air. I think I don't really think there's anything you can do to the track to make it safer, and I think the knee-jerk reaction of adding gravel traps is going to make it less safe. I think what really needs to change is they need to look into the side pod design of cars and try to make those safer. Because as it
Well, the
currently
thing-
stands, the side
And-
pod designs can only really withstand one heavy impact. You know, you have one heavy impact, it deforms, and then the next heavy impact, there's nothing to deform, and that's what killed Hubert.
The problem
So-
with this is that the reason that the Hubert's crash is not the only reason they're adding gravel traps. They're actually having a motorcycle race at Spa in 2022,
I think that's
and
an awful idea.
yeah,
They've
but
had
they
them
want to do
before.
it anyway.
Yeah, motorcycle races
I-
just don't work.
When was
enough.
actually the last time they ran?
But the reason they're adding the gravel traps is for the motorcycles. So, well, I don't know. Maybe Spa will find a way that cars won't get flipped over or anything. So,
And if anyone needs invalidation of this knee-jerk reaction, look no further than the 1999 Belgian Grand Prix,
Indeed.
when
where
both
gravel did exactly
BARs,
that.
they speared off into the gravel trap. Not only that, but also the massive shunt for Alex Zanardi in 1993.
Oh, very true. Very true. Good shout, Chris. Yeah,
And by the way, the last time they ran a motorcycle race at Spa was in 1990. And Hans Spahn won the race in the 125 class.
okay.
And
Really, I just think that motorbike racing at Spa is too dangerous, and it's going to make it more dangerous for the cars because of that gravel trap. So I just hope that everything turns out okay. But
so what would you guys suggest doing about the runoff at the exit of Radion?
nothing. Cancel the motorbike race.
just improve the cars. Like Caitlin said,
okay.
improve the cars.
Formula One is not the Formula One and Formula Two aren't the only categories that race at Spa. So that would mean that a lot of cars would have to be changed.
No, definitely not. The thing is, racing, as we said before, there's always the opportunity that there's always potential for things to go wrong. So you can never make it completely safe. You have to remember, it's actually only the Formula 2 cars. It's only that one specific accident that has actually caused a fatality at Spa. I think the last fatality at Spa was probably Stefan Beloff in '85.
It was actually in a touring car race, I believe. It was during the 24 hours of Spa.
The Stefan Beloff one.
No. Another one.
Okay.
There was another one, I think, after that. By the way, the other winners in 1990 at the Belgian Motorcycle Grand Prix at Spa were Americans John Kaczynski and Wayne Rainey, who won the 250 and 500cc classes, respectively.
I recognize that name.
Now, Wayne
Chris.
Rainey?
Yes. Sorry, Chris. What I was
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is that. So what I'm saying here is I don't mean like rush around solving, fixing every car, attaching like bubble wrap to the sides or whatever. I'm just saying that, because I just don't think there is any way you can make the runoff area of Spa safer. I think you can make it more dangerous, but I don't think you can make it safer.
And we actually, I think you and I both actually talked about this after the tragedy at Spa last week. That I called this. I knew they were going to do something like this. They were going to overreact.
Yeah.
They were going to overreact just like they did in 1994, just like what Formula One did in 94, when they put those little chicanes in at Spain, Canada, and ironically enough, Spa, that looked rather Mickey Mouse. This is kind of the equivalent to that almost. I'm surprised they didn't put a chicane at the bottom of Eau Rouge.
I'm glad they didn't. I understand why they did it in '94 because it was a very temporary thing, because they knew that the cars were unsafe, because they knew that the side pod design wasn't progressed enough, and because they all of that. But yeah, I don't think that calls to change Rouge Radion are justified. I do think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and I say that we do need to learn from this. I don't think it's anything as drastic as that. I think it's just that we can take the data from this accident, and engineers are going to use it to make better side pod designs.
And also, and I'm going to transition this into something that I think Caitlin wants to talk about as well. Don't add sausage curbs in runoff areas.
That is not a good idea.
Indeed. I think we're going to cover
And
this
Caitlin will tell us why.
I think we're going to cover this in miscellaneous stories and points, because I could rant for a while, but I think we've been on this subject for a while now, so I think Jack has some IMSA news that he wants to tell us about.
I do have some IMSA news. So Graham Rahal will be returning to Acura Team Penske for Motul Petit Le Mans in the number 7 car. Alexander Rossi was originally rostered for the endurance drive in Penske's number 7, but due to his Bathurst 1000 commitments on the same weekend, will not be able to participate in the IMSA season finale. Rahal has raced at only a single event with Acura Team Penske, that being last year's Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. He will once again be teaming up with Penske regulars Elio Castroneves and Ricky Taylor.
And it was actually this year's, not last year's. But let me see what the spotter got on my wall. No, actually, it was last year's. Check that.
I'm just on Wikipedia now.
Yeah, it was last year's. Check that, because Alexander Rossi was in the number 7.
Yeah, it was last year. It was last year's, and he participated in a single event, which was the Rolex 24 at Daytona. The few years before, of course, he was racing with the BMW Rahal Lenneman Lanigan team, and I think those were all Rolex 24 drives as well.
Yeah, GTLM.
Anyway. And of course, Alexander Rossi will be at the Bathurst 1000, partnering James Hinchcliffe at Walkinshaw United Andretti in their Holden Commodore.
In the mega car, I believe, right?
I think it might be a wild car entry, so it might not be a mega car. It might be something else.
And I will say that it is a... Anyone else looking forward to Bathurst here?
I'm looking forward to Bathurst, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Bathurst always delivers.
It always does deliver. Anyway, if we'll move on from IMSA, it's time for our final segment of the day. If you're ready with the jingle, it's time for...
Miscellaneous stories and points that we missed, and therefore recovering OTM. Boo!
There we go. I was ready with the jingle. Jack, take it away.
Yeah!
Anyway, we start off with with some news from the Italian Grand Prix. Lando Norris will be running a Valentino Rossi helmet at the Italian Grand Prix. And we'll also just talk about the Formula 3 thing that we were going to talk about before, because you wanted to talk about that, Caitlin.
I will say, by the way, before we do that, sorry about that.
No, it's
He
okay.
also has been walking around with with an old doctor hat that Valentino Rossi made famous, and I think he actually looks pretty good in that hat. Let me tell you.
Okay, well, we know that he is a big Valentino Rossi fan. So, the story that I was going to talk about was to do with sausage curbs. So, we've seen in the past that sausage curbs are an awful idea. I've always said they are. They break suspensions, as we've seen at the Austrian Grand Prix several times. 2016, 2017, I can think of. Rosberg, Kvyat, Magnussen, they've all been off with suspension failures there. Many thousands and thousands of dollars have been wasted. And we've also seen some more serious incidents with lighter cars in junior categories, for example. There was one at, I think it was an Australian race back in the late 2000s, where a car got launched into the wall. There was one, Konstantin Terashenko at Spa a few years ago, who got flipped over a curb and caught fire in the barrier. This year, of course, we had Sophia Flörsch, end of last year, getting flicked up in the air at Macau and going into a marshal post at high speed. And
That was
today-
actually a photography tower.
Photographer.
That was a
tower,
photographer tower.
You're right, Chris. And today, we had another potentially serious incident where Alex Peroni in the Formula 3 race ran wide at the Parabolica, hit a sausage curb, and I've got no idea why there was a sausage curb there. Really, really stupid idea. And absolutely flipped up in the air, ended up pretty much in the trees, landed on top of the barrier. I have not seen height like that on a car in an extremely long time. Just a ridiculous incident. And I just think that the FIA has to stop with the sausage curbs. Of course, they were implemented with the idea of stopping people from, discouraging people from cutting the track because people don't want to get their suspensions smashed. But I think that curbs that damage cars that readily, they're just a hazard. And yeah, people can say, well, stay off them then. That's the point. But you could also say that about barriers or runoff areas in general or other cars. That doesn't mean that we don't implement safety precautions to avoid serious incidents from those. And with the sausage curbs, I just think they are such a hazard, as we've seen time and time again. And again, it just infuriates me so much that this would all be solved with a simple thin strip of grass by the side of the road, and no one listens to me. So yeah, that's my rant over, and I'm just so glad.
Caitlin Penny for FIA president.
Indeed. And I'm just
Anyway,
glad that,
and also,
Alex, guys,
To add, go ahead.
Chris, careful. Sorry, Chris. What I was gonna say is, I'm just so glad that Alex Peroni has walked away and that he is completely fine. And also that the FIA has removed the sausage curbs now. I'm glad it's not too late. I don't know why it took them this long. But yeah, good to see that Peroni has walked away. Right, now you can speak, guys.
Sorry. Also, I just thought of a couple more examples of cars hitting the sausage curb and flying. The first Formula E race, let's not forget that.
Very good point.
When Nick Heidfeld flew over the sausage curb after that quite opportunistic block by Nico Prost in the first Formula E race, and then who was the driver in the WEC for driving for SMP? Was at Spa?
Oh, that was Matthias Isaacian.
Yeah.
Another
Flying
race
over.
curb.
Yeah, basically blowing over when he hit the sausage curbs
Actually,
at the top of Radion.
I don't
Anyway,
think
we
that
could
was
probably
a
gone.
I don't think that
Sorry.
was a sausage curb. It's just that it's very bumpy on the inside there. It's kind of like ridged, and that's what he hit rather than a sausage curb. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
We could probably talk on. We could probably go on for a long time about this, so we should probably move on to well, some of the other stories that we have here. So, was this one here, Caitlin?
So do you mean the Max Verstappen one?
To do.
Max Verstappen will be starting from the back of the Italian Grand Prix after an engine penalty. That of course was announced on before Friday, I think. However, what we've realised now is that he would have started from the back anyway because he lost power in qualifying. I'm interested actually because that's 3 races in a row that Verstappen has reported a loss of power in qualifying. If you remember, he had a problem in qualifying at the Hockenheim ring. He also had one at the Belgian round, which then miraculously disappeared very, very quickly. And now he's had a full-on power cutout here at Monza as well. I'm not sure if it's going to translate to engine penalties in the future. But yeah, whatever the case, he is going to be starting from the back, just as his teammate Alex Albon did last time out. So let's see if Verstappen can have the same kind of comeback as his teammate did. It's a good track to take a penalty at.
Anyway, also, story from F2. Juan Malcorrea's condition is critical but stable, according to a statement from his family. And we hope that,
There's been an update. There's been an update to that. This is the statement. This is the statement from the family. I'm going to read the full statement to you. First of all, on behalf of our son, we wish to thank everyone within and outside the motorsport community for their wonderful and caring get well wishes that we've received, as well as messages for a speedy recovery. We're confident that Juan Manuel will review them all himself once he's back in charge of his social media accounts. Honoring our son's straight to the point and honesty that characterizes him, we wish to update you on the status of his injuries and physical condition. As time has progressed, new complications have surfaced as a consequence of the massive impact he suffered Saturday in Belgium. On his arrival to London, Juan Manuel was diagnosed with acute respiratory distress syndrome. This is an injury considered common in high-impact accidents such as this one. Unfortunately, this injury has resulted in Juan Manuel falling into acute respiratory failure. Juan Manuel is currently in an intensive care unit that specializes in respiratory injuries. At this point of time, he is in an induced state of unconsciousness and under ECMO support. Juan Manuel is in critical but stable condition. We are confident that our son will surprise us like he always does with his tremendous fighting will and strength to recover quickly. At this time, we kindly request our privacy and space be respected. As a family, we need to pull together and be 100% there for Juan Manuel.
So we hope
that doesn't sound good.
But we hope at least it's stable, and we hope he can make a speedy recovery, and
Absolutely.
And be back in a racing car soon. Should we move on to some Formula E news that we have?
Yes.
Yes. Audi have revealed their livery for their Formula E car for the 2019-2020 season, and it's pretty much exactly the same as last year's car.
Why fix what isn't broken?
Like
Yet they still
minor livery updates.
Yeah, why fix what isn't broken? Yet they still keep Daniel Abt on the team.
Oh god.
Daniel Ab's not a bad driver. I mean, he's been quite good.
See, I just wanted to make that little savage joke because I've been watching a Golden Girls marathon.
If I ever make a racing team, I'm gonna have Daniel Abt and Jose Maria Lopez on the team just to annoy you.
No, Jose.
Perfect.
No, here's the thing. Jose Maria Lopez will just start at the back of the field outside of 107.
You said
He'll start in the previous weekend. He'll start in the previous weekend's race and finish by the time we get to the next two. Provided he hasn't crashed in turn 1.
Well, okay, I kind of wish I hadn't brought up Jose Maria Lopez because I know you can go on for ages. You can go on for ages about Jose Maria Lopez.
Again. Let me just say, I watched a Golden Girls marathon before coming on, so I'm a bit like Dorothy Zbornak from that show.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Now we have some news relating to FOM, which is never really good news. So if you've been following Triple Crown Racing on Instagram and whatnot, you'll know that I'm partnered with a page called F1 India. Now, F1 India was deleted by FOM, but for using copywritten material, and then came back, and unfortunately has now been deleted again for using copywritten material. This is FOM being annoying. F1 India can come back. FOM, please stop deleting everybody's pages. Anyway, we also have some NASCAR news, and I thought this would be a nice little story to end on because it's some good news for a good driver.
That Jones boy has been given a contract extension following his win at Darlington. He will continue in the number 20 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota in 2020, which was really cast into doubt because there's a young driver waiting in the wings from the Xfinity Series, Christopher Bell, who, of course, people are saying is going to be the de facto replacement for Matt DiBenedetto in the 95 Levine family racing Toyota. Now, I actually like Eric Jones. He's really impressed me.
Yeah.
He's always there or thereabouts, running like top 5, top 10, just being consistent. And if I'm a team owner, I'd want someone like Eric Jones. And that, and also I get to say for that and also every time Darlington comes around, I get to say I get to call him that Jones boy. And and note to anybody at Joe Gibbs Racing listening to this, first of all, thank you. Second of all, next year's Darlington race, I beg you, please run a Rob Moroso throwback. That is all.
Chris's dream racing lineup: Eric Jones and Jose Maria Lopez. And I think on that note, it's about time. It's about time to end. Do we have credits?
We do indeed.
And also, I just found this out. Bianca Andreescu has just become the first Canadian to win a Grand Slam singles title at the U.S. Open tennis tournament, beating Serena Williams.
How many wheels do they run on?
I don't know if I don't know how. All I know is, as a Canadian, I'm really genuinely proud of her, and she's a U.S. Open champion. That's all there is to it.
That completely unrelated story.
Absolutely.
How many cylinders does a tennis racket have?
Well, it's actually in the 1982 Monaco review that Clive James did. He actually said Bjorn Borg sleeps there between tournaments, wearing his headband in bed, and waking me up occasionally when one of his rackets explodes with the tension.
Are we talking about? I think we should end before we keep talking about tennis.
Right.
My name has been Jack McKenzie. And joining me on the mic today has been the wonderful Chris Whitfield, who's talking about tennis for some reason, and Caitlin Penny's commentary, accompanied with the graphic you've seen on screen that was made by @FigHour on Instagram. Thank you very much to you, the viewers tuning in. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
Ta-ra!